Hey, what's going on? It's now 3 o'clock. Trailblazers take a tough loss in Minnesota. Ayton, Brogdon, Scoot, and Grant all out. 119-114. The final. Coach Billups pleased with his crew.
I'm super proud, man. These dudes, they just don't let up, man. They don't give in. I just love it. I love it. I think that's our best attribute, as a team, period. We just don't matter who's playing, who's not, who we're playing. It don't matter.
Blazers kick off a 6-game homestand tomorrow. Oklahoma City in town. Tip at 7. Chris Burkhart's going to have game day for you at 4:30. Trailblazers Ticket Tuesday. We have 3 pairs of tickets to give away for the Raptors and Rockets. On the Rip City Drive today, listen to Dwight and Chad for your chance to win. From the NFL, the Seahawks have released safeties Jamal Adams and Quandre Diggs and tight end Brooke Disley. Today, Adams, a 3-time Pro Bowl selection, was set to make a non-guaranteed $16.5 million this season and count 26.9 against the cap. All right, Godfather, at 4:20 today, we're going to go to Denver and talk with Ryan Edwards from KOA. He was at the Combine last week along with Benjamin Albright. I'm trying to uncover information on how not just Denver views the top quarterbacks that are going to be coming out in the draft, but also the list of teams now that are going to be potentially looking at drafting quarterbacks. And now it's looking like with the potential quarterback need, with all these teams that are on the list, you're going to have multiple teams reaching for quarterbacks in the first round after the top 3 go off the board, and Williams, May, and Jaden Daniels. Those 3 guys are going top 3 in some combination. I'm convinced of that. But every quarterback after that, whether it's Bo Nix or Michael Penix or J.J. McCarthy, I'm not convinced any of those guys are going to be great NFL quarterbacks, and yet you're going to see teams quarterback desperate reaching and selecting these guys in the first round. And I've went through Dane Brugler and a lot of these top draft analysts. They put together their top 50 draft prospects. Most of those guys after Williams, Daniels, and May, none of them have like a first-round grade. But in the NFL, quarterback is king and teams are desperate. So I don't know how this is going to go down, but I'm fascinated to watch. But I'm concerned because the Broncos are selecting at 12. And if they have their eyes on one of these guys after the top 3, they're almost guaranteed now to have to jump up. That's wild to me. And it's been going on for years in the NFL where teams reach and you get punked by quarterbacks, because one thing we do know, all of those guys, the top 5 or 6, one will be a star.
Yeah.
And after that, you don't know what you're going to get. It's crazy.
Well, this isn't exactly a new warning shout from you on this topic.
No.
You've been talking about this for a while now, and you're right. It's just, you can scientifically proven, in fact, that that teams overreach. That position is so important. You're willing to just go all in on a guy in a spot where you could get a legit starter.
Yeah.
And let alone that, maybe a Pro Bowl type player at that. I mean, if you're drafting 10th, come on, you could probably get the best center, offensive tackle, guard, whatever. You can get a really good player in that slot.
100%. Now, just taking a quick look at the first round, and we'll get to this a little bit later in the show. Chicago, Washington, New England. That's 3 teams. Almost certainly will take quarterbacks. The risk for New England there, they've got multiple needs across the board and a new head coach, but they need a quarterback. So if you miss on the guy, you're going to miss out on a guy that should be starting for you. The Giants could potentially be in the market for drafting a quarterback. That's 4. And then just go down the line. Atlanta's another. The Jets are another. Minnesota, Denver, Las Vegas, and Seattle. Well, there's 10 teams there potentially that could be looking to draft quarterbacks. What that means is if you got your eyes on whether it's Bo Nix or Penix or J.J. McCarthy, get ready to move up. And then now you're not just taking a quarterback that's risky. Now you're giving up assets to move up and take a guy that you think is the one.
Yeah.
That you think.
Yeah. You pay a steep price. And I do think Minnesota's going to draft quarterback because I do believe Cousins is going to Atlanta. That's what people are saying. It was the word at the Combine. that's where he's going. I think his wife is from there. He's got contacts there. And he's spent enough time up in the IC North. He doesn't need to spend another contract.
Well, I think it's going to come down to what teams are willing to give him guaranteed money.
Oh, yeah.
Last couple of deals, fully guaranteed. I'm with you. I doubt Minnesota's going to go 3 years fully guaranteed for Cousins again. But the great thing about Cousins, he's not considered in the top elite group of quarterbacks in the NFL. But, if you bring him in, he's going to get you on the right track and win games.
But he's in the Sports Business Hall of Fame. No other quarterback of his ability has made as much money playing quarterback as he has.
He's made a fortune. And he's opened the door for other quarterbacks to get guaranteed dollars.
He's part of that whole thing that's raised the market to what it is now.
Yeah, there's no question. All right, we'll get to that here in a moment, but we've got to deal with more important matters. Anthony Edwards last night, Blazers and Timberwolves from the Target Center in Minnesota. I truly don't understand this. He doesn't show up on the court for the jump ball when the game begins. They don't know where he's at. He shows up late, and they get hit with delay of game. You've been covering this league for a long time.
Yeah, right.
What was the reason given for why Edwards did not arrive for tip on time?
Well, there wasn't really even a reason. They said his normal procedure is to work out with those bands, those stretch
bands.
Yeah, before he goes out.
Yeah.
And somehow he just said he lost track of the time, is what he said.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but you said I've been covering a long time. Never heard this one before, Chad. This is one I've never heard.
Yeah, my cynical side immediately thinks, what was he doing? Where was he at? And what was going on to lead to him being late to the court? Because, look, I know how athletes operate. A lot of these NBA guys, they sleep in, they like their naps. But the one thing that they know is when to show up at the arena, what it takes to get warmed up, stretched out, and ready to go for a game. And because they've been in that system for so long, their body clock, their mind, everything is tuned into that, right? It's hard for me to believe you just show up late because you lost track of time.
Well, and what was said was he was in the arena. It's not like he had a flat tire or a car accident on the way to the game. Mm-hmm. Hey, that stuff happens. We know. I have seen that. That happens. You call, you use your cell phone. You call and say, "Hey, look, I've been in a wreck." But this is a whole different story. What we need is. Do you remember the late great radio guy Paul Harvey?
Yes.
He used to do that thing. And now here's the rest of the story.
Yes.
There's more to this story, Chad.
There has to be.
Yep.
Where's Chris Haynes at? I see him on TNT. I want him on this story to find out what exactly was going on.
Yeah.
Everyone's got jobs. A lot of people have jobs like we do where you've done it for so long, there's like an internal clock that goes off. Like I know my body, my mind, everything feels different when I get close to 3 o'clock, where I know it's like, okay, it's time to go on air. You can't be late. You got to show up on time. You got to be ready to go. And I get that clock and I get antsy because I know that things are about to go down. Athletes work on the same type of clock. So there was probably some shenanigans going on with Anthony Edwards here in this one. And then he went out and played like absolute garbage.
He was terrible. That's what really made me wonder. It's like, is he having a problem with somebody here? That's like a guy who says, you know what, I'm not even sure I'm going out there tonight.
Or was there some type of New York Met activity where he pulled off to the side for a quick one before he took the court? Like, what was going on there? There's got to be a lady involved somehow, some way.
I don't know. I'm not going to say that. I have no idea, but I am saying there's more to this story. And whether it ever gets out, I don't know if we'll know about that. But come on. Here's the other thing. I've seen guys not on the court, and it's like, oh, man, where's Chad? It's like one of those guys in the layup line, shooting jumpers is going to say, he's not here. Hey, Rook, go get him and send a rookie to get him, or I'll go get him, or whatever.
Yeah.
You don't let a teammate be late on the court.
No.
They got a technical foul for not having him on the coach, and everybody's wait a minute, where's that? Where is he? Where's Edwards?
And this is just not another player on the team. It's their best player.
Their best player.
Everyone knew, like, where's Ant?
Delay of game.
I don't understand. I really don't.
That's one of the craziest ones ever.
He'll get fined for that one, won't he?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely will.
And someone on staff should probably get busted, too. It's like, your job is to make sure the guys are out here. What's up with that? If he's in the arena, couldn't someone, his teammate or someone on staff, be able to point to the fact that he wasn't around?
First of all, there's a trainer who's supposed to do that. Second of all, And most teams run it this way. Every assistant coach is responsible for 2 or 3 players. I work with a guard. You work with the small forwards. This guy works with the bigs. They're all responsible for these guys. So that guy is in trouble. That assistant coach has got to be in trouble.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Somebody needs to shed some light on this whole thing, Chad.
Well, you don't want shenanigans like this going on when you're in the stretch run getting ready for the postseason. You brought up another good point, too. Like, I do think after watching Minnesota play and looking at the rest of the Western Conference, I'm envisioning Denver and Minnesota reaching the Western Conference Finals. Convinced Denver will be there. Minnesota, I think, can get there, but they can't get there if both Edwards, and Cat are not playing well at the same time. They need those guys to play better. Neither one of them played well last night. But then again, when you're playing a team that's not good, maybe your focus level is not where it should be.
I would cut him that slack, I guess. But Karl Anthony Towns has got such a bad habit of going out in the first quarter and drawing 3 fouls. And every one of them, he has palms up to the heavens, asking the Lord why he got called for that foul. And then you look at the replay, you fouled the guy, okay? And I just don't think he's a real trustworthy player. He's got problems with it. Had problems with Rudy last year. And all these things are going on inside his head. Great player. I mean, he's an all-star.
Yeah.
He's got all kinds of talent, but you don't always see it. And Edwards, I thought, man, Edwards is going to be a star in this league forever. But he probably ought to be out there for the tip-off once in a while,
I thought it was an 8:30 local time tip.
Yeah, right.
My bad. Chris Burkhart's been covering the NBA for a long time, and he's with us today. Good to see you, Chris Burkhart. What's your take on this whole weird situation with Edwards? Because you've covered athletes for a long time. You don't see a guy show up late for the tip-off very often.
No, that's a weird one, and it's interesting because, Dwight knows and you know, especially for the home team, that when you're home, you have that thing dialed in because you don't have to get on the team bus, right? So they all show up on their own schedule, and they all show up at the exact same time every single game because they go through their pregame routine. You always knew when Dame was going to warm up and when CJ was warming up, when Ant's warming up. Mm-hmm. So you know where you're supposed to be when, and your internal clock definitely goes off. So I'm not buying, I was just really digging this stretch band I was on, really getting my glutes stretched out or whatever the heck. So, excuse he has. Something was up. It's kind of funny.
The weird thing, too, is like I see Dame and a lot of the other stars for years, they get stretched out by the trainers on the floor well before tip-off.
Yeah.
So they go through that whole routine beforehand. I don't know what they do behind the scenes because they've got that workout room and access to some other equipment. I don't know what they do, but I see a lot of guys that get stretched out well before tip-off.
A lot of guys go to the weight room, do a quick, just a warm-up with their weights.
Yeah.
And then very often you'll see a guy, they'll get a cup of coffee, they'll get a soft drink, and maybe some sort of energy bar, something like that, something to eat, hour before they go out, something like that.
All
Replenish, whatever they lost during their early warm-up. They have an early warm-up before the fans are even in the building. That's what a lot of spectators don't understand.
Yeah.
They're out there shooting before you're even allowed in the building.
That's right. The closed ball practice or whatever they call it, shoot around.
Yeah.
A lot of teams will do that. All right, so there you go. We'll find out what the real story is on that, I'm sure, in the near future. We'll come back on the Rip City Drive, and when we do, we're going to start giving away Trailblazer tickets. We have 3 pairs of tickets to give away today. A pair for the Houston Rockets game, 2 pairs for the Raptors game. We got a pair to give away next, and then we'll focus in on the NFL draft and the quarterbacks coming out of the combine. I'll have Dwight rank the top 6 based on what he saw. And we'll discuss how many teams could be looking at quarterbacks in that first round. And then at 3:45, we have 2 pairs of tickets for Tom Segura to give away. So, once again, Rip City Liquidators here.
Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal. We got it for you. Rip City Drive here on your home of the Blazers, 620 Rip City Radio. Well, I'll tell you what, Godfather, Chris Burkhardt is a media pimp. He's been all around the state of Oregon over the last couple of weeks covering state tournaments for the OSAA. We got the 6AA tournament going on at Child Center this week. He was on Trailblazers Broadcasting Network last night. He's everywhere. He's an animal.
How did he get that going on?
He's got everything going on.
He's got connections.
He does. He's got a lot of connections, and he's working it, and it's great to have him here. We'll give away a pair of tickets here in just a moment. How you hanging in there? You've been everywhere, man. You hit me up a couple of days ago. You're like, I'm in the back of Peter Weber's car. We're on our way to whatever town we're going to cover the tournament, and you were working the social media in the back seat.
We did. I went to Baker City, Pendleton, and Coos Bay in, 4 days. That was a trek.
Baker City. Give those to me again.
Baker City, Pendleton, and Coos Bay.
Baker City to Coos Bay is a long haul.
Oh, yeah. It was.
Golly.
Well, we started, we went from Portland to Baker City, the day there, then to Portland, or Pendleton, and then Pendleton with a quick stop in Portland, and then down to Coos Bay. Yeah, it was brutal.
All right, you brought up something very interesting to me. Adam Drexler, son of Clyde, on Twitter put out a question. Hey, Rip City, can you help me? Why does my father not have a statue at Motor Center? And I got to thinking about it. I was like, are there any statues down there?
Yeah, the easy answer would be to text Adam back and say there are no statues in the nearby district. Nobody has a statue.
That's surprising.
Which is crazy. Teams always put their, statues up of their great players or whatever. And, Chad, I've always thought the first statue should be for Paul Allen. He built that place in Portland, Oregon. A guy spent his own money building an arena. That deserves a statue.
Paul Allen saved the Seahawks, literally, and the Trailblazers, literally, from leaving town.
Yeah.
Spent ungodly amounts of cash on the team, did whatever it took to win, and truly cared about the Portland Trailblazers. He did. I know for a fact one of his best friends who went to the after party after the Hawks beat the Broncos and won Super Bowl 50 or Super Bowl 48, he said, what I really want is to be able to celebrate like this with the Trailblazers. That's what he really wanted. He loved what was happening with the Hawks, but he wanted that with the Trailblazers. So I agree. Paul Allen should be number one. Who else would be on the statue list of guys that deserve it?
Well, I think you start with Bill Walton, best player on the title team, MVP of the league and the finals. And then you go to Clyde Drexler. Oh, I should have also included Jack Ramsey. Put him on one knee somewhere like he used to sit to watch the game on one knee on a towel. Jack Ramsey, Clyde Drexler. Then you go to Dame.
Yeah. There you go.
That's it.
Okay. I'm with you on that. So Paul Allen, Dr. Jack, Bill Walton, Clyde, Dame.
Yeah.
5 statues. And you could set it up around the Rose Quarter where people could walk up. And like they have in Denver with their Ring of Fame honors outside the stadium, you could walk up and see a little bust of each person as a plaque to talk about their accomplishments. What I like about that is that I get a chance to learn about some of the Broncos that came before my time. so I can find out some of the history there, which is interesting.
Well, I think fans need those kinds of things to help relive the history of the organization. And honestly, if I were Jody Allen, I know Paul was probably sensitive. He did not have a big ego. He probably wouldn't have said, hey, put a statue of me out there. Jody, get a statue of your brother out there before this thing sells to another owner may not want to do that. Paul deserves a statue outside that thing.
100%. I agree. All right, we have a pair of Trailblazer tickets to give away right now. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday. This is for the Blazers and Rockets coming up at Moda Center. And we'll take caller 6 right now. Caller 6, 503-248-0620. 503-248-0620. Fire away with your phone calls right now. Chris Burkhardt will take your information, and you get a pair of tickets for the Blazers and Rockets. 503-248-0620. Caller 6. Call now and get your tickets for the Trailblazers. It is your show. You take it over. React to us. Good job. Phone lines are lit.
Oh, God. Well, they wouldn't.
Show me your tickets.
If you haven't begged for those calls, that no one would have called, Chad. I think that was great.
And I saved a pair for the Blazers and Celtics that we'll give away on Thursday during the show.
Ooh, nice.
All right. So 503-248-0620. Chris will get your info. Caller 6. We have 2 more pairs to give away on the show today. All right, let's talk NFL draft. Here's why the combine is fascinating to me, Godfather. I want to go through this list again because there are quarterbacks, and this is supposed to be a rich quarterback draft with all the guys who are available. But take a look at what you've got. And this is not the entire first round, but these are the top teams. Chicago, Washington, New England, 1, 2, 3 in the draft. All 3 of those teams are expected to take quarterbacks, and you would expect to see Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, and Drake May in some combination going off the board 1, 2, 3. Boom, boom, boom. Chicago, Washington, New England. That's 3 quarterbacks.
Yeah.
But after that, Arizona and the LA Chargers, 4 and 5. They both have quarterbacks and will not be looking for one. The Giants are sitting at 6. That's a 4th team. It's not a done deal. They're going to draft a quarterback, but they could be in the market in the draft for a quarterback. So that's 4. Tennessee's another team that's sitting there at number 7. That could be a 5th team that could be looking for another quarterback. Atlanta at number 8. That could be 6. If they don't get Kirk Cousins, they could be looking at the draft and saying, who's going to be our next guy?
Yeah.
Chicago has pick number 9, but they've already got a QB. After that, you've got the Jets sitting at 10. That's number 7 for teams that could be looking at a quarterback. They're going to have Aaron Rodgers next year. Obviously, Zach Wilson's not the answer, so maybe they want to draft and bring in a guy to replace Aaron Rodgers. Then you got Minnesota sitting at number 11. Obviously, if Kirk Cousins bolts, even if he doesn't bolt, they could be looking at the successor. Denver at 12 absolutely is in the market for a quarterback. That's 9. And then you've got Vegas at 13. They, too, could be in a market for a quarterback. That's 10. And the Seahawks are sitting there at 16. That brings the total up to 11.
Yeah.
Now, we looked at what? There are 6 guys. Caleb, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and then in some order, Penix, Nix, McCarthy. That's 6 guys.
You don't want to put Spencer Rattler in there, too?
He could be up there, too.
That's what they say.
So that's number 7.
I'm shocked at that. But.
So you have like 11, potentially 12 teams with quarterback needs that could be looking to draft a quarterback. So what that means is 3 guys are taken off the board, 1, 2, 3. If you want to take Bo Nix, J.J. McCarthy, Michael Penix, whichever one is your guy, or heck, even Spencer Rattler, then you're going to have to trade up. And this is where it gets really tricky for me because I would give up everything to be able to trade up to draft Caleb Williams. But how much draft capital do I want to give up to move up to secure J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix or Michael Penix or Spencer Rattler? That's risky business because so many of these top quarterbacks in the draft won't hit. And you know as well as I do, to be a good team in the NFL, you have to draft well, make good decisions because guys you take in the first round, they need to be starters on your team moving into the future. And when you take a reach at a QB who may not have a first-round grade, but because of quarterback need, you take him in the first round and he ends up not being anything, then you just wasted a pick on a guy that could be starting for 5, 6, 7, maybe 10 years at another position on the team. That's the real dicey proposition of quarterbacks. And yet there's such a great need for quarterback play around the NFL.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy? So risky for these guys. And as we pointed out last week, there's no perfect formula, whether it's questions or interviews or breaking tape to know how that game's going to translate to the NFL, especially as Kurt Warner, as you mentioned, pointed out. It's so hard to know because of the offenses these guys are running in college.
Yeah, I think you have to hope you have somebody on your staff or your head coach or your GM who's really good at this. I mean, Andy Reid knew what he wanted, and he went and got him, right?
Yeah, he did.
Is he the only one with that kind of superpower?
The Green Bay Packers appear to have a quarterback superpower.
Yeah.
Favre, Rodgers, and now Jordan Love.
Yeah. Neither one of those teams needs one right now.
The Chargers appear to have a pretty good eye for quarterbacks over the years. They took Breeze, Phillip Rivers, and now they've got Justin Herbert.
Mm-hmm.
But there are a lot of teams who have failed, and you can go through the list on multiple quarterbacks. The Cleveland Browns are notorious for it. There's no exact science, which is what makes it tough. So I want to ask you this. If you had to rank the quarterbacks 1 through 6 based on the guys that we just mentioned, we can even throw Spencer Rattler in there and give you a 7th. Who would be your number one guy in the quarterback list? Caleb Williams.
Yeah.
I agree. He's the one guy of all the quarterbacks in the draft that I don't believe in a 100% can't miss, but he's as close to 100% can't miss that you can get at that position. I truly believe in him.
Well, here's the thing on him, too. He has been the top choice now for over a year.
Yes.
People have been saying he's the guy, okay? Everybody is trying to knock him off that post. And you've seen it, Chad. I mean, there have been people coming from I don't know about him. I'm not sure about him, on and on and on. You know what? He's still number one with most teams.
Yeah, he holds on to the ball too long. His dad's a little bit squirrely. We got to keep an eye on him.
He might want to own a piece of the team, blah, blah, blah.
It's all nonsense. Yeah. He's going to be number one for sure. The Bears are going to draft Caleb Williams. They're going to trade Justin Fields. That's how it's going to go down. And my guess would be there could already be a trade that's agreed to that took place during discussions at the Combine. That the Bears know who they're going to send Fields to. That deal is already agreed to in principle.
Yeah.
Much like Russell Wilson and the Broncos and the Seahawks when they got together a couple of years ago. That deal was done at the Combine, but it wasn't announced until later. But we'll find out here real soon because next year the New Year League year opens up, and then we'll start getting reports with free agency and everything else. So we'll find out soon where Justin Fields is going to wind up. So Caleb's number one. Who would you put number 2 behind Caleb?
All right, here's when it gets dicey.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I would take either Drake May or Jaden Daniels that high. I'm not a big fan. Here's the deal. Drake May, I'm just not sure of. He doesn't look real accurate to me. I think he could be there. He reminds me a little bit of Sam Darnold in that he's a big kid, he's, strong. He's got a good arm, but can he put it all together, be accurate enough, process enough? I just don't know. Because, again, those East Coast guys are really hard. We don't see them enough. And I don't go – I watched them all throw at the Combine, and I don't even remember if he threw. Maybe he did. But I like watching him in real games. That's where I get a feeling. Jaden Daniels, I've seen plenty of him. He has the talent. He's a very talented guy. I just think, for me – I don't think he's going to hold up. That would scare me. I don't want to pick a guy. And I said the same thing about Tua. Tua is a good player when he can play. But I think at some point the Dolphins will give up on him because he's just not dependable enough. He's just too small. And I don't mean height-wise. That doesn't bother me as much as he's not built like an NFL player. You got to be so strong to take these hits. So I'll tell you, second and third would be the two guys I mentioned.
May and Daniels?
May and Daniels would be second and third, but they might be in the 20s for me. They might be in the 20s.
How about after May and Daniels? You go Penix, Nix, McCarthy, or Spencer Rattler?
Well, I read that Penix's medical stuff was okay at the Combine. I have a hard time believing that with the knee problems he's had and the fact that he looked like he was a little bit injured for about half the Pac-12 season where he wasn't moving well. He looked like, and I think that was a rib or something they said, but whatever. I like Penix a lot if he's healthy. I would be willing to take Penix in the late first round because of his talent.
So you would take Penix ahead of Nix or
I
McCarthy?
would take him ahead of Nix, and then I would take Nix. And I would not be afraid of Nix in the late first round either because I think late first round, once you get to the 20s, you're not dealing with drafting an elite player with that pick. You'll pick good players. They'll all probably be starters in the 20s, Chad.
Yeah.
But you're not looking at missing out on an elite player.
All right, so you have Caleb, May, Daniels, Penix, followed by Bo Nix. So what about McCarthy and Spencer Rattler?
I would take McCarthy certainly ahead of Rattler. I saw Rattler throw, and I was not impressed at all. Didn't like his arm action too much. McCarthy is just too much of a mystery for me. I would be reluctant to spend a pick on a guy who threw so little in college, who didn't need to throw to win them games, didn't see him in a 2-minute situation with his team trailing and having to bring him up the field. Yeah, I guess all his measurables would show that he can handle all that. I just didn't see it. So I just wouldn't have the confidence to do it. And I know a lot of people love him.
All right, I would go Caleb, followed by Jaden Daniels, followed by Drake May, and then after that, some combination of Nix and McCarthy, followed by Penix, followed by Rattler. Penix is, I like the guy, and I like his arm talent. I just don't like guys that are not particularly mobile. He's just a little bit too tall and stands up in the pocket for me. I want guys that can move. That's my type of quarterback, and he's not that guy. So I only believe in Caleb completely, and then I think Jaden Daniels has got a pretty good chance. I have the same concerns about his frame that you do. Can he absorb punishment and take it? But I've watched enough. I watched a ton of Jaden Daniels in college because I went to a lot of his games live.
Yeah.
And I like him. He's got great arm talent.
Would you take him second?
In the draft?
Mm-hmm.
If I was Washington, yes. Yeah. I would. But I would not take Drake May at number 2 or number 3. That would be a major concern.
You'd wait on it. What, outside the top 10 or still in the top 10?
I just don't believe in any of those other quarterbacks for sure. So I think it's risky. I was fine with May until Mark Schlereth tainted me and talked about his loopy delivery and how that's going to be a problem. And I trust guys who have played with high-level quarterbacks to tell me whether or not a guy's going to be able to make it on the next level. So his delivery is a concern for me now. And the other guys, I love Bo Nix. I think Bo Nix, in my mind, would fit really well with Sean Payton.
Mm-hmm.
Accurate, smart, processes well.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know if I would trade up from 12 into the top 10 to draft Bo Nix. It's too risky.
But if Sean Payton took him at 12, you okay with that?
If he believes that is his franchise quarterback, yes.
Pretty hard to argue with him picking a quarterback, and that he probably knows quarterbacks about as well as anybody, right?
Yeah. So if he drafts him and thinks, okay, this is my guy, then good luck with that. I'll trust his acumen with quarterbacks more so than my brain, of course. But it's a risky proposition, very risky, because you need to make sure that when you take a guy in the first round that he hits and becomes a starter. When you start drafting guys and they don't hit in the first round, that can set your franchise back quite a ways, especially for a team that only has 6 draft picks and doesn't have any salary cap space and has a lot of holes on the team. That's the other issue.
Yeah.
When you have multiple holes and you could have access to great talent, that's the scary part, right? So you reach on a guy like Nix or Penix or whoever. That means you're passing on a guy that could be number 1 at their position, where you could plug in a guy at left tackle or defensive tackle, or there's a cornerback shortage in the NFL, top-line corners. Maybe you're passing on a top corner to take a reach on a quarterback. And the reason why teams do that is because if you don't have a quarterback, it doesn't really matter what else you have because you're screwed.
Yeah.
That's the dangerous part.
You cannot win without the quarterback.
Yes. Now, the other advantage with some of these teams here in the draft that could be looking for quarterbacks, obviously someone's going to get, as you mentioned before, Kirk Cousins, and someone's going to make a trade for Justin Fields. So that could take 2 teams that might be looking to draft a QB out of that draft market because they go out and land their quarterback.
And they are going to trade Fields, right? Doesn't everybody think that?
Yeah, I think the deal was probably already set in motion last week.
Right.
It's just a matter of who it's going to be. Is it going to be Pittsburgh? Is Atlanta the one that's going to, lock up on Justin Fields? There's obviously interest there with Atlanta, or is it somebody else? Someone out there probably looks at Justin Fields. You know how these coaches think, Godfather, I can make him the guy that I want him to be.
I can work with him.
Right?
That's the case in basketball too. Yeah, I know, but we can work with him. We'll make a jump shooter out of him. He'll hit threes for us.
But here's the risk. Like if you're the Broncos, for instance, Sean Payton already got rid of Russ. So he's made it clear that's not my quarterback. Well, if you do identify a guy, like maybe it's J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix, well, what if you decide you don't want to risk it and trade up to go get your quarterback? So you sit and decide to wait at 12. What if all those guys are gone and you end up with no quarterback? And then you've got to sell to your fan base, we're going to roll out with free agent pickup and whoever else is on the roster. That's a tough one too, right? At least if you draft a quarterback, you can present that guy as the hope of the future.
You sure can.
Even if he doesn't start the year under center, you still can present it like, hey, we got our guy. You know how these teams do it.
It's not quite like saying you're going to bring Joe Flacco back, right? Or
Yeah.
Geno Smith, we were able to get him away. We were able to pry him away from the Seahawks.
And Bronco fans don't want to hear about recycled quarterbacks because that's all they've gotten with Case Keenum and freaking Joe Flacco and Teddy Bridgewater. They've been down that path, and no one likes that path because it's a crappy path. You know, it's not good. So I don't envy these guys. The pressure on these guys is incredible, right? It's incredible because if you miss, it could cost you your job and it could set the franchise back.
Yeah. So the easy way out of that is probably not to take one of those guys and just
that's true. But I
trade
wonder,
back and get more picks, right?
Here's what I do wonder with the Broncos because they released Russ yesterday. Like right after they all get back from the combine, Russ is out of there, right? Does that tell you that maybe they went and they looked at the quarterbacks and talked to him and it confirmed that whoever they want to draft is the guy they like? I wonder if that's an indication of we definitely know.
I think the finances made the difference there. I just think they waited just to be waiting. I mean, you could bring him back another year, could you?
Well, if you know that your other quarterback options are completely awful and you have a chance to compete with Russ, maybe. I'm just telling you that I just
that's
wonder.
Very expensive.
I just wonder. That's true. But what you're talking about essentially is this: you're going to pay him $85 million over 2 years. That bringing him back would have cost you another $37 million. It would have cost you an extra $37 million. They're going to pay him out $85 million.
No, but if he comes and plays this year, then they owe him for the following year, right?
They would have already owed him for that. What they didn't want to pay was that extra injury guarantee of $37 million. So they already owe him $85 million in terms of money that they have to pay out. What they didn't want was that extra $37 million thrown on top of that because of the injury guarantee by being on the roster at the start of the league year this year. That's what they were avoiding. So they saved $37 million and took the $85 million cap hit.
Yeah, the cap hit's not all cash, though, right?
Well, they still owe him. I mean, they have to pay him out. That money's guaranteed between this year and next year.
Is his whole contract? I thought the last year or two wasn't guaranteed.
That's true, but 25 is not the last year of his contract. So he's essentially what they're doing is they saved themselves an extra $37 million by cutting him now that they didn't want to pay him.
Yeah, but
what I'm saying is that I think that they must have gotten confirmation that, hey, we found our guy. We're going to draft him. We're going to do whatever it takes to take him. Oh, well. It's a mess.
That would have been a tough fence to mend after kind of what's gone on between them, where they sat him the last 9 games or whatever, how many games, 5 games, whatever it was.
Yeah, no, it's going to be better for the parting. Sean doesn't want him, and Russ, you know, he doesn't need to be there and not play for a guy that doesn't want him there. You want to be in a situation where you want it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that they could have, that both sides could have come to terms there. Like if the Broncos were going to bring him back and pay him the money that is owed, he would probably show up with no problem. He just wasn't going to do it by giving up that injury guarantee and give money away. Why would you do that? I wouldn't do that. You wouldn't do that. No one would do that. I don't know. I don't know what to think about this. What you're going to probably see is teams trading up into the top 10 to take, some combination of McCarthy, Nix, or Penix, and then we'll see how it shakes out. It's risky business, Godfather.
Yeah, and it's complicated by those free agent guys that are out there that could become somebody's selection rather than drafting one of these guys. I would probably, if he's 100% healthy, rather have Kirk Cousins than one of the, final 4 guys on your list. You know what I'm saying? The first couple guys, maybe you take a chance, and certainly Caleb, you'd take him. But after that, Cousins is, the last couple of years, shown to be a pretty good NFL quarterback.
Yeah.
Better than Russell Wilson,
But for me, there's only one quarterback I trust that I would draft with confidence. That's Caleb Williams. Everything else I think is a crapshoot, and I would be very nervous about taking any of those guys after Caleb Williams. Teams are going to do it anyway, so
they're going to be 100% confident when they do.
We got our guy.
We got it. Couldn't believe he was still there. The famous draft line.
All right, we'll come back. We got 2 pairs of tickets for Tom Segura. We'll give those away coming up next. 503-248-0620 is your telephone number. And after we give away the Tom Segura tickets, Dwight's going to tell me about what he took away from the high school basketball he took in over the last couple of days. You got the Rip City Drive. All right, Godfather, this is no surprise to you, but I'm a dumbass.
Oh, what?
Here are the details on the Broncos situation with Russell Wilson. They owe Wilson $39 million for the 2024 NFL season. Once they pay that sum to the veteran quarterback, they will not owe him any more money. Denver already paid Wilson $85 million of the $124 million it fully guaranteed him at signing. The $39 million figure will make up that difference between those two sums. Wilson will just miss out on another $37 million, as his salary for 2025 would have become fully guaranteed if he were on the roster as of the fourth day of the 2024 NFL league year. That's the reason the Broncos plan to release him after free agency opens on March 13th. So there you go. It's still, no matter how you slice the numbers, they're going to pay him $124 million for nothing, basically.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Yeah.
How that GM, George Payton, still has a job right now, like, I like him and respect him, but when you hire Hackett and then you do the deal with Wilson and it blows up this badly, those are the type of situations that usually cost people their jobs.
See, I go back to the Hackett hiring. I think that's what caused the problems the first year with Russ.
Yeah.
And then it all just carried over. I mean, Sean Payton walks in the door and listens, then he pops off about Hackett, which didn't no one any good.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you get carryover, and pretty soon, second year's not working. If it could have gotten the first year right, it might have been much better.
It's such a bad situation. I don't even like to think about it. Like how happy I was 2 years ago when they signed him compared to now.
Oh,
This is not the ending. Not the ending I anticipated. I was pumped.
You were dancing in the streets over that.
Man, I was popping rod. I was like, this is incredible. And now we're here. What a mess. What a disaster. Maybe the worst trade in the history of sports.
Well,
it's that bad.
almost.
Yeah, well, we'll get to a great trade. This is one of the best trades. We're going to talk about one of the greatest trades in the history of sports coming up at 4. All right, 2 pairs of tickets for Tom Segura. Call now, 503-248-0620. First 2 callers through. Chris will get your information. You're set for Tom Segura. 503-248-0620. Fire away with your phone calls. See Tom Segura live, 503-248-0620. First 2 callers through get a pair of tickets for Tom Segura. 503-248-0620. First callers, 2 callers through will get a pair of tickets for Tom Segura. All right. High school basketball. What game did you go check out?
I went to see Wesleyan and Southridge Friday night out at Southridge.
Nice. I know you love prep sports.
I do. Yeah.
Good atmosphere?
Yeah. Packed gym. People standing. There were standing room. I mean, it's a nice gym. The new high school is being built.
Yeah. Not like the ones I grew up in.
Chad, in the old days, nobody paid attention to sports when they built their facilities.
Yeah.
These new plants that are being built, especially in the suburbs, but I give the PIL credit. Franklin's amazing. They are taking care of all of the things that kids do outside the classroom. Most of them have really nice theaters, band rooms, auditoriums, all that stuff. But the gyms are great. And this was really a nice place. Given it's not really a new high school, Southridge has been there a while, but we enjoyed being there. It was just, I have some concerns about the way the game's being played now.
What'd you notice with the way the game's being played?
Chad, all these kids think they're Steph Curry or Damian Lillard. And probably more Lillard because it's Portland. They're lining up 10 feet behind the three-point line, ignoring open players underneath probably to shoot long threes. I don't think at that age. I mean, you might have a play once in a while. A kid's going to come along. That's a weapon if he can make those shots consistently. But I didn't see a lot of that. And look, I'm not trying to diss either one of these teams. They're well coached. They're good teams. I got no problem with that. I just don't like the turn that the game itself is taking.
All right, we'll finish our thoughts on this when we come back, and then we're going to get to the 50-year anniversary of what I now think is one of the most incredible trades in the history of sports. Like, I couldn't believe it when you told me the story. I was like, that's not real.
Yeah.
And then you look it up, and it's like, that really did happen.
It happened.
It's really unbelievable, and we'll share it with you next. All right, coming up in 20 minutes, Ryan Edwards, 850 KOA in Denver. He was at the Combine last week. We'll get his take on the quarterbacks and also the end of the 2-year debacle in Denver between Russ and the Broncos. So Ryan Edwards coming up in 20 minutes. And coming up here at the end of this segment in about 10 minutes, we'll give away another pair of tickets for the Trailblazers. This will be for the Blazers and Raptors coming up at Moda Center. And all you have to do is listen to us for your chance to win. And for all of your Trailblazer ticket needs, simply go to trailblazers.com. Now, I want to finish the thought on the high school basketball. You're talking about the concerns about the way the game's being played with all the youngsters putting up deep threes. This goes back to the discussion we had last week. I really think Steph Curry has impacted the game of basketball in ways that you wouldn't know until you go to a high school basketball game because Steph Curry, like I grew up with guys like Larry Bird, Magic, MJ, these guys that I can't relate to because they stood at 6'9" and could do things that I could never hope to do. I think a lot of kids, heck, even Caitlin Clark, you look at Steph and you think, well, he kind of looks like I do. He's not real big. He's not muscular. He's not ripped like an Adonis, but he can shoot the basketball really well. I can do that. I can go out and practice my shot, and I think it's spilled over into youth hoops now where kids are putting up long threes.
I was told the other day by a friend of mine, go to in fact, yeah, I remember who it was. He had a team in this tournament down in Salem for fifth graders. He said, you ought to see the fifth graders. They're trying to shoot shots from 22 feet out that they can't get the ball there. But everybody thinks that's what you should do. They're all shooting threes, and they're all doing Euro steps. That's what the kids are seeing now, so that's what they're doing. And you got to admit, a good Euro step looks pretty cool. That's what they're emulating.
Well, with Steph Curry, when you go to a Warriors game or you cover a Warriors game, the fans get there as early as possible because Steph Curry's pregame shoot-around, it's like watching batting practice with Mark McGwire because he puts up shots from deep. He puts them up from half court, from three-quarters court, and he'll shoot one from the tunnel, and people want to watch it because of his shooting ability, and I just think it's impacted the game. But this goes back to the deeper issue we were talking about, right? AAU basketball, youth basketball, the best player on the team's normally got the ball in his hands, so he's not learning to move off ball. The other players on the team aren't learning to run actions and free up shooters to be able to get open shots, so the movement's not there in the offense. And now you got kids shooting up long threes. That's not a good direction for the game of basketball in our country.
And I think you had a game up on your phone or something earlier today. That was an NBA game, right? What was it?
I was watching last night on YouTube. I got stuck in YouTube mode again. I was watching Game 3 of the '88 NBA Finals, the semifinals. Nuggets with Doug Moe against the Dallas Mavericks when they had Rolando Blackman and Roy Tarpley and Mark Aguirre in that group. And that was a series that I remember because the Nuggets lost the series in 6 games. I was very bitter, but we were watching. I pulled up and looked at some things last night. I was like, I got to show Godfather. The Nuggets in a playoff game, on most possessions, all 5 guys on the offensive end would touch the basketball. I showed you a clip and a highlight. It didn't lead to a good shot, but they ran their offense for the full shot clock to get the best shot possible.
Yeah, and they were a high-scoring team.
Yeah.
But they did it with, I think, selfless offense that allowed everybody to touch, everybody to shoot. And it was amazing to watch that because you forget how much off-ball movement there was, Chad. Away from the ball, constant down screens, constant cross screens, all kinds of movement to spring people over for good shots. And you're not seeing that now. You're really not. Very few teams are very disciplined with what they run at the offensive end. You'll see a little bit of a weave into a pick and roll, and that's about it.
All right, let's talk about the most incredible trade in the history of sports.
I couldn't wait.
I couldn't believe when you brought this up. You're like, hey, I've been waiting on this one for a while, 50-year anniversary, and then you told me what it was. I was like, wait, what? So I went to the New York Post, and they've got a story up on it. I mean, it's truly ridiculous. And I want to read just a couple of excerpts. This week, the 50th anniversary passed of another, shall we say, quote, interesting milestone in Yankees history. None of the principals was invited to Steinbrenner Field to throw out a ceremonial first pitch. There were no speeches. There were only a few books that take a close look at the 1973 Yankees and those that do always pause in early March. That's when Fritz Peterson and Mike Kekich engaged in the most infamous trade in baseball history. They traded their lives, literally. They swapped wives. They exchanged pets. They essentially traded families It was perhaps the single most 1973 thing that happened in 1973. Incredible.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So, anyways, this goes back to, let's see here. Going back to July 15th, 1972. That day, the Yankees and Peterson dropped a 6-2 game to Oakland at Yankee Stadium in front of 10,400 fans. That night, Fritz and Marilyn Peterson and Mike and Suzanne Kekich joined Ron Swoboda and his wife Cecilia and a few others for a small dinner party at Dobbs Ferry home of longtime Post baseball writer Maury Allen. It was, by all accounts, a fun night, which broke up around 2 in the morning. By 3, Maury and his wife Janet had cleaned up and were headed to bed when Maury looked out the window and noticed the Petersons and the Kekiches were still there, talking in front of their cars. We remarked about it and then went to bed. Allen later wrote in his Yankee-themed book, All Roads Lead to October. These are ball players, remember, different from you and me. The rest, as you would say, would have broken the internet if the internet had been invented in 73, all thanks to a party thrown by a postie. I really would have liked the cameo role of Maury in the Damon Affleck flick that they thought about doing. So anyways, what happened is these couples met for the first time at this party.
Mm-hmm.
The two guys who were on the team liked each other's wives, and they had a discussion late that night and decided to trade families.
I don't know that it happened that quick. I think they had a couple other meetings after that, but it was fairly quick decision, supposedly. They decided to, they traded not only their wives, they traded their kids and their pets, went along. I mean, it's mind-blowing how this could actually happen.
It says here the new Kekiches didn't survive as a couple, though the Petersons still do. Both were soon exiled to Cleveland. It's a fun enough tale and compounded greatly when you consider it was the first big story that broke under the new stewardship of George Steinbrenner. So I my mind is blown because, one, if you're married, how do you go to your wife and say, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
I would like to trade you in for his wife. I think we should switch families. Like, who in their right mind does that? And two, how do you start that conversation? That's wild.
I don't know. It would be interesting if they did a movie to find out, or if one of the principals wrote a book. I can't believe, Chad, that all 4 of them agreed to this. There had to be one person who's saying, I think I'm kind of comfortable here with, I don't know that I like him that much. I think he's a good guy and all, but I don't think I want to be married to him.
Not only that, but like if you're friends and teammates with a guy, how do you even start up that conversation? It's like, dude, I think I like your wife more than mine. That's usually a way to get stabbed or punched. Seriously, Godfather.
At what point do you say, let's trade? At what point does that conversation start? Whoa.
And don't the kids?
Oh, my.
Hey, Dad, what's up with this? Sorry.
Jeremy Grant hits the thruple.
That's pretty wild, Godfather.
Not only that, my real dad's a better pitcher than him. Come on. I don't know how that goes. Was there a player to be named later in this deal? Or?
It sounds to me like the two guys were on board right away. Maybe one of the ladies was on board with the idea, but there had to be a conversation. My guess is one of the ladies was probably a little bit had cold feet about the whole idea, and the 3 of them had to talk her into it. That'd be my guess.
Yeah, and the thing is, too, I was around covering baseball in those days, and I can tell you this was never a secret. It didn't appear that they were trying to make it a secret, or they assumed that they just couldn't keep it a secret. But everybody knew about it. It was front page news in the sports section all over the country that this happened. And I'm covering baseball, and I'm hearing players talk about it. It's like, well, yeah, maybe for Jim's wife, yeah, but I don't know. There's no other wives on this team that there's crazy discussions going on about this.
My guess is there's been multiple situations where a guy has a friend.
Because guys are guys.
Guys are guys, and it's like, man, I really am down with his wife.
Yeah.
He thinks it. He fantasizes about it, but he's never going to go to the guy and be like, dude, we need to trade wives. I'm totally into her. You don't do that.
And you understand divorce. I mean, very often there's a third party that causes a divorce. But how often do they just switch with someone else? I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but to happen of teammates in a sport.
Well, the crazy part, too, is to be married to two athletes where you're in a bit of the limelight, right? It's one thing to switch families or trade families when you're not in front page news, where you can kind of fly a little bit under the radar.
Yeah.
I don't even know how you break that to your families. Wait a second, you're going to do what? Wait a second, what?
These guys aren't playing in Tampa Bay either. They're playing in New York.
Yes. With
media frenzy.
Yes. Burkhart, can you imagine trying to sell your wife on the idea of trading her for another wife? But she would probably kill you.
I wouldn't get the sentence out.
She might like a different husband.
Yeah, I'd hit the floor before we hit the period of the sentence.
That's true. It would probably depend on who's involved in the trade.
Yeah.
Well, what pieces are we talking here?
Yeah.
Well, not for that guy.
Yeah, right.
You're going to trade me for that? No.
Yeah.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I'd trade you for just about any guy, actually. That'd be.
I wonder how the two ladies got along over the course of time. Were they still friends? Did they hang out together as families? Because that'd be really interesting.
That would be impossible to believe, probably.
Do you still call your dad, or once the trade goes down, he's no longer dad?
Gosh. You start calling him by his uniform number.
Yeah.
I like number 25 better.
Yeah, if you didn't know that this story was real, you would think this didn't happen. But Ben Affleck and Matt Damon looked into, they loved the story. And, of course, they're Red Sox fans. They'd love to do this movie.
Sure.
I'd like to see, this would probably make a good movie. If you can get someone to support it. It'd be a wild script, right?
Yeah, they probably didn't get to make the movie because nobody believed it would be a real thing.
There's probably a lot of guys that have thought about, there's a lot of wives, too. I wonder if I trade, I'd love to trade my.
Boy, I'd like to trade him in.
Yeah, I'd like to trade him in. But I don't know. I just can't believe it. And one of the couples still together after all this time.
That's pretty incredible, too, I think.
Yeah. 1 out of 2 in a situation like that, you would have thought both would have dissolved rather quickly because it's such a bizarre idea, but yet one couple made it last.
How many times do you think they had to tell the story? Oh, yeah, you're the couple that traded. How did this happen? They probably had to tell that story a lot of times.
Well, how can you not? It's such a bizarre story that people have got to ask. If I met him, I'd be like, all right, so let's get into the details here.
Let's get this out of the way first.
Yeah. Well, how did that conversation go down? How do you bring that up? How do you even suggest that to your wife? Like, honey, I think we should do this. How do you do that? Is it a one-on-one with the wives first before you bring it up as a group, or is it something you do with all 4 together? How would you do it?
You'd have to do it one-on-one first, wouldn't you? Then you have the group discussion. Yeah, and you probably even have to break it. Now, how is this going to work? Whose house who's going to live in whose house? And are the wives and families going to move, or are the husbands going to move? Well, I assume the husbands just moved.
How do you break that to your wife? I think we should do a trade.
I don't even want to think about it.
No, but seriously, like that's the fascinating part. How do you break that? How do you broach that subject? How'd they do this?
Well, maybe the women brought it up.
This didn't happen. There's no way that this went down. I refuse to believe.
This is fictitious.
Yeah, this is a fictitious story. I wasn't around 50 years ago. I wasn't around in 73. I refuse to believe that this went down. That's bizarre.
Craziest thing ever.
I mean, like in today's world, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on, right? Like if someone told me they switched families, I'd be like, that's a little odd, but oh well, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on in the world. But in 1973, free love or whatever, that's bizarre. Like there were probably a lot of people that like, well, that were like, that thought they were crazy.
Yeah.
Like if I tried to tell my Nana, like these families, they traded wives, she'd be like, what?
Yeah, you'd almost wonder if you're the general manager of the team. It's like, I wonder if I should just ship these guys out of here because it could be a potential problem.
You think?
Yeah.
Heck, Marty Schottenheimer, Lowe told me that Marty Schottenheimer, he was pretty smart. When they had family get-togethers with family functions, he did not allow guys to bring girlfriends to family functions.
Yeah, wives only, right?
Wives only, because he didn't want potential issues that could pop up with some of the dynamics with different women and stuff like that. He was cautious of that, and he knew that could disintegrate a locker room real quick. Yeah.
Well, you'd think these two guys, too, after a little while, wouldn't there be tension there? I mean, one of those two couples, maybe they're not getting along as well as they thought they would, and maybe they'd like to go back to the previous thing. I could see fist fights in the clubhouse over something going on.
Yeah, just the idea that guy's sleeping with who used to be your wife, like, that's weird.
Yeah.
But they were obviously down with it. It sounds like these two fools thought it was the greatest thing ever. I got the best, you got the best. We both win. Is that a win-win trade?
You have to wait a few years on these trades, Chad, before you evaluate them.
All right, we'll come back, and when we do, we're going to hear from Ryan Edwards, 850 KOA in Denver. He'll share his thoughts on the combine, the quarterbacks, what the Broncos are going to do, and the disaster, which was the Russ trade between the Broncos and Seahawks. Probably the worst trade in sports history, potentially. And the Hawks, John Schneider deserves a lot of credit because he got over on that one big time.
That was a swindle.
All right, we have a pair of tickets to give away for the Raptors and Trailblazers. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday for all of your ticket needs. Go to trailblazers.com. We'll take caller number one right now. Raptors, Blazers, pair of tickets. Call 503-248-0620. Call now, 503-248-0620. Pair of Raptors and Trailblazer tickets. And we'll hear from Ryan Edwards coming up next on the Rip City Drive. All right, joining us right now on the Rip City Drive, he is from 850 KOA in Denver, one of our favorites, and he's back on the show. It's Ryan Edwards. You can follow him on X at R Edwards Radio. Ryan, I appreciate your time. We're going to talk about the combine and some of the quarterbacks, but I guess we'll start with Russ. It's officially over. I know for you, who has been covering this story for quite some time, it's not a surprise, but your reaction to the Russell Wilson era being finally over after 2 years in Denver.
Yeah, I mean, it was disappointing, right? I mean, there's no way around that. All the hope, the expectations 2 years ago, you know, and in fact, we didn't even make it 2 full calendar years. You know, everybody was pretty amped. You thought it was a new era of Broncos football. Certainly became a top 10 team, you know, by most power rankings. People thought, all right, this was the missing piece. And then, you know, fast forward 2 years later, and you know, we understand why we're here. Certainly the debacle that was the Nathaniel Hackett season really was never on the same page with Sean Payton. And the Broncos now are going to be taking an $85 million dead cap hit. And yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals we've kind of known about it for a while. So there's certainly no surprise to it. But even when it does eventually officially happen, there's still kind of a moment of disappointment.
Ryan, I've heard so many different summations of what these 2 years were like with Russell Wilson. And I'm kind of curious, how do you think he's going to be remembered in Denver? Is this going to be the biggest debacle ever, or are people going to take into consideration the coaches involved, et cetera? How do you think this is going to go in the future?
I mean, debacle is probably a good way to frame it. I'd say that's going to be where everybody starts. Yeah. And then, yeah, you obviously work to who's to blame. And I feel like there's a lot of fingerprints on this, right? I mean, I think Russ, first and foremost, if he plays better, he's still on this team. You know, even if he didn't get along with Sean Payton, if he played better in year one, he would have been Nathaniel Hackett wouldn't have gotten fired. He would have gotten a second year. So you start there. George Payton, certainly the GM, you know, has his fingerprints on it. The extension was both him along with the ownership, so they also have some fingerprints on it. And I mean, it's one of those deals where it would be great, I think, for a lot of fans to have just a smoking gun to be like, okay, this is clearly where it all fell apart. But it's just a series of moves that kind of led us eventually to this place.
We're talking with Ryan Edwards, 850 KOA in Denver. You were at the Combine, so coming out of that, how would you rank the top 5 or 6 quarterbacks based on your own mind and what you heard and what you picked up on and saw with your own eyes at the Combine?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'd say that Caleb is still going to remain, number one for almost everybody. I do think there should be a good argument for Jaden Daniels, and I think in a lot of years, Jaden Daniels, the Heisman winner, would be in the conversation for the number one overall pick. But people out there still believe that Caleb, even in a bit of a down year last year, deserves to be that guy. I mean, so many Patrick Mahomes comps, those kinds of things. And right now that's the quarterback everybody's chasing, and this is the closest thing we've seen to him coming out of college. So Caleb, I'd say Jaden Daniels and Drake May in some version of depending on what you're looking for, right? Because they both offer different skill sets at the quarterback position. I think Jaden Daniels with his legs is going to be able to do more early on. Not to say Drake May isn't mobile, but Drake May is more of a project from the pocket, and again also had a bit of a down year. So you want to see where he's at. And then J.J. McCarthy clearly in that mix. I'd say probably QB4 could go as early as the top 10. I know the Broncos certainly have some interest there, but. The fact is, you get to quarterback 5, and I think it's a pretty big drop off from that top 4. And number 5 maybe it is Michael Penix, who had a really nice workout there at the combine. I think Bo Nix probably deserves to be in that conversation, and I think a lot of people aren't talking enough about Spencer Rattler. And I think Spencer Rattler could be really fun project quarterback in the NFL too. So it's a very interesting class, but the top 4 are pretty cemented, and there's a pretty significant drop off from there.
Do you think the Broncos have their eye on one of those quarterbacks, and if he's there when they pick in the first round, they're going to take him?
I mean, for me, yeah. I mean, there was a quote from last year where Sean Payton's talking about Caleb Williams, and it's hard not to be impressed by him. But honestly, if there's going to be a quarterback that they would take a run at, I think it'd have to be J.J. McCarthy. He seems, in my opinion, probably the most pro-ready guy. Certainly what he ran at Michigan. And his pedigree, I mean, the amount of wins. And I know quarterback wins is a little bit of a groaner as far as a stat goes, but it's also something that I know that is a factor when it comes to, hey, this guy has played at a very high level. He knows how to close games. He knows how to operate a pro-style offense. And you know how to build around him. You know that he can see the field in a way that a lot of college quarterbacks can't. So if there was going to be a quarterback that I think just screams a Sean Payton quarterback, it would be J.J. McCarthy.
The Broncos have the 12th pick in the first round. In order to get McCarthy, will he be available at 12, or are they going to have to move up?
Boy, it's so tough to know. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen with Minnesota yet. Same thing with Atlanta, maybe even the Giants. There's just so many teams, and even the Raiders, there's rumors the Raiders might try to move up. I mean, there's so many teams right now in that area that it wouldn't shock me at all if they tried to move up and put themselves in position. So the Broncos are going to have to be, pretty nimble here. The problem for them is they only have 6 draft picks. They've obviously the implications of the Russ trade and then of course also the Sean Payton trade have limited them in their capital. So they come into this desperate need of a quarterback and maybe the least equipped of all those teams. So it's going to be sort of fascinating. There was a time, where I would have said easily J.J. McCarthy slips to you at 12. And then now, of course, post-combine, I feel less about that. I feel like he's pretty much going to go top 10. And if that's the case, then you need to start making some calls and seeing where you can get up to. Maybe you have to take a couple of jumps. But the Broncos, if they are intent on getting one of these quarterbacks, I still think they add somebody in free agency, but if they are intent on getting one of these quarterbacks, they're going to need to be aggressive, in my opinion.
Okay, Ryan, I'm not going to ask you where you think Russell is going to end up, but I want to ask you what makes the most sense for him, do you think? Which destination would be best for him?
Yeah, it's such a good question because, what does he want, right? He probably wants to be a starter, right? He wants to show everybody he can still play. And how many of those teams are going to just make him the unquestioned starter and not either draft a quarterback this year like the New England Patriots, right? How many teams like the Pittsburgh Steelers keep coming up? Well, they've been pretty adamant that they want to give Kenny Pickett a real shot. And if that's the case, Russell Wilson doesn't want to go there. That doesn't make sense for him at all. I think there's a couple of teams that I keep coming back to through this, and we'll obviously talk about it today's show. I think Minnesota, if for some reason Kirk Cousins does not go there and he decides to go to Atlanta or wherever he decides to go, that could make some sense because Minnesota, they're drafting at 11. They could say, hey, let's go with Russ on a really cheap contract for a year. We're getting ready to pay JJ. It would make a lot of sense to do that. And then the other side would be Atlanta, right? I mean, they seem to be a team that needs a veteran quarterback. Now, the problem is I don't know how well Russ fits either of those offenses. I don't think it's a great fit either way, but that's one of those deals where, I mean, for the price tag of what Russell Wilson is, and you think a guy that's easily top 20 quarterback, if not, kind of middle of the pack. I mean, in a quarterback-starved league, if you can get him for $1.2 million, and you can pay a bunch of other players and sort of surround him with talent, I think that could work for a lot of teams. But again, you'd have to commit to that, and you'd have to commit to no challenge there if you're, because Russell Wilson's probably saying, I don't need that. Now, if those all dry up, that's where things get really interesting, and maybe he does have to take a role where he's competing.
Hey, Ryan, one final question. Dwight and I are both big fans of Michael Malone and the way the Nuggets play, and I've grown to respect Jokic. I've never seen anyone like him. But what is the one concern that would prevent them from going back-to-back?
Oh, that's such a good question. Health, I think health would be the first thing, would be my biggest worry. I mean, Jamal Murray's been kind of in and out of the lineup this year. And, Joker is what he is. He's a tank. But, if something were to pop up with him, I mean, there's a lot of improved talent in the West. Minnesota, who they've said gave them the toughest test last year in the postseason. Minnesota is going to be good. Oklahoma City is better. Right? The Clippers are better. Phoenix, theoretically, is better. So there are a lot of teams that worked very hard this offseason to improve themselves. And again, I think health is the biggest one. But, the one thing you say about the Nuggets right now is they know who they are. They know how to close games. Watching them beat the Lakers the other night was just so impressive because they were down to the Lakers for most of that game. And if you're a mentally soft team, you probably just say, you know what? It's a schedule loss. It's fine. We're getting ready to head back home. We got to get ready for this homestand. Instead, they go on this just unbelievable run in the fourth quarter. They put the Lakers. I mean, they just absolutely decimate them. They just shot after shot. Nikola Jokic hitting a fadeaway bank shot. I mean, just like what do you do? Like what do you do? There's just so many different ways they can beat you. So again, nobody should come into this thing saying it's a guarantee. But man, if they're healthy and they can sort of stick to their game, I think they're going to be right there in the mix again.
All right, Ryan Edwards from 850 KOA. He's part of KOA Sports, which is 2 to 5 Pacific, 3 to 6 Denver time, along with Dave Loken and Alfred Williams. You can listen on the iHeartRadio app. He's on X at R Edwards Radio. Hey, Ryan, we appreciate the update and the insight. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk in the future.
All right, thanks, fellas. Appreciate you.
All right, love him. And from what I take from Ryan, if the Broncos take a quarterback in the first round, it sounds like it's going to be J.J. McCarthy, but it didn't sound like Ryan was dead set that he's 100% sold on the fact the Broncos will take a quarterback at 12.
Well, here's the interesting thing, too. Normally, you might be able to tell J.J. McCarthy, would he still be there at 14? Well, I think in a normal year, you might have a pretty good idea about it. Nobody seems to know past the top guy. Nobody knows after that who's going where.
Yes.
Everybody's afraid that somebody's got a secret liking to one of these guys and he's just going to move up and pluck him away from you. So if you like McCarthy, you're going to be afraid enough that you might have to move up if that's who you really want.
Yeah, these quarterbacks, it's so weird because I'm a big believer that if you identify your guy, whatever it takes to get that guy, you get him.
Yeah.
But it's just hard for me to believe that teams could identify that next three group of quarterbacks and say, oh, he's definitely the franchise guy. Bo Nix, Penix. Take your pick. Like, it's tough. McCarthy.
Yeah.
Like, I like McCarthy, but I never saw him carry the Michigan Wolverines.
Yeah.
I mean, I just didn't see anything in college where I can tell you for sure, I'm like, that guy translates. He might. I think he might. I have no idea. But what's going to happen is because, like you said, these teams are so freaked out about not getting their quarterback, and they're worried about all these other teams that could potentially take a quarterback. they can't sit around and wait. You got to be active and move to make sure you land him, which means you got to move up and sacrifice more assets.
Yeah, and nobody shares information. There's not a lot of intel about what those teams ahead of you are going to pick.
They all lie their ass off.
Yeah.
Everything that's being said right now, you have to take with a grain of salt because teams are just putting out what they want you to think is going on. They're all lying. The only team I don't think is lying is Chicago. Right? They know what they're going to do, and they've probably already got a deal in place to move out Justin Fields.
But if you're sitting at 14 and you want a quarterback that probably should go in the 20s.
Yeah. There's too many teams that want quarterbacks, so that guy's not going to be around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're going to have to move up, and you're going to be afraid not to move up pretty high. I mean, if you're going to make the deal, make the deal so you get your guy, right?
That's what I'm saying. J.J. McCarthy probably will not be available at 12 if the Broncos wait until their pick to pick. That means you got to move up. But at what cost?
Yeah.
What do you have to give up to move up a couple of spots?
Well, and you can, the smart thing is, you got 2 or 3 deals in play. You got one and then another, but you have to have one where we can wait till it's our turn and then just take our guy.
If he's available, great. If not, whatever.
Right.
Yeah, they have the guys ranked like that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, no. Like the Chiefs, they identified Patrick Mahomes and they moved up to get him. They were aggressive.
And people thought they were really dumb for doing it.
Yeah, because no one had Patrick Mahomes as like a legit player. That's what I'm saying. Which one of these guys that we think is a joke is going to turn out to be a stud? That's what I want to know.
The guy, I think Spencer Rattler would be a guy that if you moved up to take him, people would be shaking their heads, right?
If Andy Reid moved up to get Spencer Rattler, I'd be like, okay, he's a player.
Yeah.
But if some other, Tom, Dick, or Harry makes the move, it's like, well, yeah, they're the Browns or whoever, whatever franchise. Right. Yeah, they're dumb.
They're dumb.
They're dumb. So that's how you know. It's always the guy. Like if Sean Payton, because I consider him a quarterback guru, he's smart. If he trades up to take McCarthy, then that tells me that Sean Payton definitely thinks that guy's going to be a stud.
Yeah.
I still don't believe it, but that's what he thinks. But, Payton's not a dumb guy either. So I don't know. Like even the Patriots, I was listening to Tom Curran last week, and he's like, yeah, I think the Patriots are going to take a quarterback, but you better be dead set that guy you're going to take at 3 is the guy you want and you believe will be the franchise guy because they have a billion needs. He said they probably have one guy that could start for another team in the NFL right now. That's the risky part. We need a quarterback, but we also need everything else.
That's funny because I was listening to a talk show from Boston.
Yeah.
And they're getting calls all the time from people that say, Harrison, the guy is an amazing receiver. And the host of the show just went off. It's like, wait a second now. I think it was Maserati. I think that's the guy that went off. It's like, it doesn't matter how good he is if we don't have a quarterback who can throw it to him or an offensive tackle who can block for him.
Yeah.
Unless this guy can throw the ball and block for a guy, we don't need him right now. You can't build a team around a wide receiver. Doesn't work that way.
All right, we have a pair of tickets for the Trailblazers and Raptors. We'll take caller 3 right now. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday, caller 3, 503-248-0620. For all of your Trailblazer ticket needs, go to trailblazers.com. Trailblazer Ticket Tuesday here on the Rip City Drive. Caller 3, 503-248-0620. It is your show. You take it over. Caller 3 right now, 503-248-0620.
Gresham!
Centralia! There's a call from Centralia right now.
All right.
Kelso! Brush Prairie!
just the coach like that that's willing to put his confidence in.
Boy, my eyes almost popped out of my head when I saw this story, Godfather. But In-N-Out Burger's coming to Ridgefield, Washington. About a 5 to 7 minute drive from where I reside. Ridgefield, Washington will get the first Washington State In-N-Out Burger, if you can believe that.
That is pretty amazing that they would go to Ridgefield before the Seattle area.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, easier to get things done in Ridgefield than it is Seattle.
They started in Oregon, at what? Medford or Grants Pass, one of those places. And it kind of just looks like they're working their way up I-5, right?
Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. So I'm pumped on that. I know I'll be making a few trips up there for Kaylee. She'll want to hit that place all the time. She loves it. But we were just talking about the prices of food. My parents were just over in Maui, and my dad was telling me, I picked him up at the airport last night. He's like, you wouldn't believe it. But he goes, the prices over there are outrageous. He said, we went into Burger King for a breakfast. He went over there with my aunt and uncle, and 2 breakfast sandwich combos with the coffee and the hash browns in the sandwich. $17 a piece, a grand total of $35.
At Burger King?
Yeah. For breakfast. Yeah, that's outrageous to say the least. And he did say that Lahaina, where the fire damage, he said it's awful. Absolutely awful. Awful, awful.
It was such a beautiful little community, too. I feel really bad for them. Terrible.
The Godbrother will be making trips up to Ridgefield now.
He'll
be up there.
Yeah, he'll have it on the GPS for sure.
Hey, Burkhart, where does In-N-Out rank on your fast food burger rankings? Are they number 1?
The burger always hits. The fries are hit and miss, but the burger's good.
Yeah, it's funny. They don't have the best fries, from what I've been told.
No, they don't.
But sometimes they hit, and they're really good. It's just a crapshoot.
How do you rank them with Shake Shack?
I don't know. I kind of like Shake Shack. I think if you give me one or the other, I'd take Shake Shack.
You know what else? I've been experimenting. Shake Shack, you know, their chicken sandwich is just about as good as Chick-fil-A.
I am with you on that one. I actually go exclusively chicken sandwich when I go to Shake Shack. I think it's phenomenal. Big time underrated.
Yeah, that's what we've been getting there too.
What amazes me about Chick-fil-A and In-N-Out is the remarkable service. Whether you're in store, in the drive-thru, they've got the system dialed in.
Yep.
You know what amazes me about In-N-Out is when have you ever seen an In-N-Out ad?
I don't think I ever have.
A commercial, seen it in the newspaper anywhere. I mean, you didn't have, but like
I just see them on the side of the road sometimes when I'm driving down the
there's
freeway.
going to build up a bunch of places, put them right on the freeway, and word of mouth carries them.
Yeah. They've got such a great reputation, though, that people are just dying for them to move into their communities. It's incredible.
Wow. That's big news. Ridgefield, Washington. It's going to be packed out there. Packed.
That freeway is going to be backed up.
All right, I want you to hear this. Ashton Hagans, the Blazers' 3-game road trip, 2 wins against Memphis. The comeback win when they're down 17 going into the fourth quarter on Saturday, and then they played a close game in Minnesota last night. But Ashton Hagans had the big game on Saturday, 13 points, 8 assists, 5 rebounds. He talked about the confidence that the coach has in him and the other young guys.
Just the coach like that that's willing to put his confidence in you late in the stretch like that, down 18 and going into the fourth. Hey, that's big, and I just thank this organization, thank Coach, and for giving me this opportunity. But now it's just time to just keep it going, keep it rolling, and just move on to the next. We got a big one in Minnesota, and we're just trying to get that win too.
Whether it's Hagans, Banton, Reef, Jabari Walker, I love seeing young guys being forced into action and making the most of it.
Yeah, Chad. Yeah, I said earlier to you before we went on the air, I think Hagans is a big part of their success recently because with Scoot out, they've needed a real legit playmaker, and he is that guy. He can pass. He sees the floor. He's not looking to shoot every time he touches it. I think he's been a real plus for them. I'm happy they found him.
All right, so the Trailblazers kick off the 6-game homestand tomorrow against OKC. I expect Ayton and Scoot to be back in the lineup tomorrow. We're still waiting for word on that, but it's important for Scoot to get in there and play the rest of the way.
Yeah. And I think he was saying 3 games ago he could play. He was ready, so I assume the same thing. Ayton I'm not so sure about, but it would be nice to get them both back.
Let's see here. Latest. Oh.
What?
Scoot is out tomorrow.
Oh, my God.
That is brutal. Ayton listed as doubtful. Whatever. Yeah, so.
And Ayton is doubtful.
He's listed as doubtful with the hand sprain. Kamara, Grant, Thibault, questionable. Brogdon, Henderson, Sharp, and Williams all out. No Scoot again.
Wow. He must have had a setback.
Oh, that sucks, man.
It's terrible.
Needs to play. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Coming up next, the Seattle Kraken take on the Winnipeg Jets. And we got the game live here on 620 Rip City Radio. Tomorrow, Justin Myers will have Rip City Mornings at 6. And then we have the beginning of our coverage with the OSA 6A state tournament.
Yes.
And that will run at 1:30 and 3:15. Chris Burkhart will have game day right around 4:30 live from Moda Center. Tip-off with the Blazers and Thunder at 7 o'clock. Thank you, my friend.
Always a good time.
Big thanks to Chris Burkhart and Ryan Edwards. You guys have a great night, and we will talk to you tomorrow.